Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more incredible stories. The unforgiving Arizona sun scorched the pavement as Clara maneuvered through the narrow corridors of the Phoenix Animal Shelter. After 4 years of volunteering, she thought she had seen it all: the joy of adoptions, the heartbreak of abandonment, and the quiet resilience of animals waiting for a second chance. But today felt different. Perhaps it was the restless heat of early summer or the whispers among the staff about a new arrival that had everyone on edge. "Clara, you've got to see this one," her fellow volunteer, Maria, called from down the hall. The urgency in her voice made Clara quicken her pace. As she approached the kennel, she saw the dog that had captured everyone's attention, a striking Siberian Husky mix. His piercing blue eyes held a sadness Clara couldn't quite place, a depth that set him apart from the other dogs. Unlike the usual newcomers, who either barked anxiously or cowered in fear, this dog sat motionless, his eyes scanning each person who passed by as if searching for something or someone. His name, scribbled on his intake form, was Ghost. But what struck Clara wasn't his name, it was his demeanor. Ghost exuded an eerie calm, his gaze unflinching and almost human in its intensity. "He showed up in the Bennett's backyard 2 nights ago," Maria explained, holding a clipboard filled with sparse notes. "No collar, no chip, but he's clearly been taken care of. He's not like the others." Claire crouched down in front of Ghost's kennel, careful not to spook him. To everyone's surprise, Ghost immediately stepped forward, his nose gently pressing against the chain-link fence. He didn't wag his tail or jump with excitement. Instead, he let out a soft, almost mournful whine. Clara felt a lump rise in her throat. "Hey, Ghost," Clara whispered, extending her hand slowly. He sniffed her fingers before sitting back down, his eyes locked onto hers as if sharing a silent plea. That was the moment Clara knew she couldn't let him become another forgotten face in the shelter system. That night, long after the shelter had closed, Clara sat at her kitchen table, staring at her laptop. She was supposed to update the shelter's social media page, but her thoughts kept circling back to Ghost. In her years of experience, dogs like him, well fed, with pristine coats, didn't just appear out of nowhere. Someone had loved him once, and someone had hurt him enough to make him this quiet, this guarded. Claire took a deep breath and began typing, determined to find Ghost the home he deserved, or uncover the story of how he'd ended up abandoned. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she crafted a heartfelt post, pouring all her observations into every word. She chose her photos carefully, Ghost sitting dignified in his kennel, his blue eyes seemingly holding secrets too heavy for words. "Meet Ghost," Clara wrote. "A gentle soul who arrived at our shelter under mysterious circumstances. He's searching for something or someone. If you think you can help Ghost find his way, contact us. His story isn't finished, and you could be the one to write the next chapter." The post went live, accompanied by the photos that seemed to capture Ghost's essence. Within minutes, the shelter's phone began to buzz, notifications pouring in. People across Arizona and beyond were captivated by the dog with eyes that told a story no one could quite decipher. As Clara hit post, she glanced at the clock. Midnight. Ghost was likely sleeping now, curled up in the corner of his kennel. But Clara felt a surge of determination. She didn't know what Ghost's past held or what his future would bring, but she was certain of one thing: he wasn't going to face it alone. The next morning, Clara sipped her coffee as the notifications from the shelter's post continued to pour in. The response was overwhelming. Ghost's soulful eyes and mysterious story had captivated people far beyond Phoenix. Among the flood of comments, patterns began to emerge. Multiple people reported seeing a dog like Ghost in the Sycamore Grove neighborhood, often walking with a young girl. A particular comment made Clara pause. A woman named Margaret had written, "I used to see him with a little girl and her dad. They walked past my house every evening. The dog was always so protective of her, like he was her shadow. But I haven't seen them in months." Clara immediately messaged Margaret, asking for more details. Margaret responded quickly, adding, "They lived in the yellow house on Willow Lane. There was another dog, an older Labrador, but I haven't seen either dog for a while now." At the shelter, Clara headed straight to Ghost's kennel, her heart heavy with curiosity and determination. Ghost was already by the door, his piercing blue eyes watching her intently. It was as though he could sense that something significant was happening. She knelt in front of the kennel, her voice soft. "We're getting closer, Ghost," she whispered. "We're going to figure this out." Later that afternoon, Clara decided to follow the trail. With the shelter's approval, she drove to the address Margaret had provided. The yellow house on Willow Lane looked deserted, its yard overgrown and windows dark. Clara knocked on the door, but there was no response. A neighbor, an elderly man tending to his garden next door, noticed her hesitation. "Looking for someone?" he called out. "Yes," Clara replied, approaching him. "I work at the animal shelter. We recently found a dog, and I believe he might have lived here. Do you know anything about the family?" The man's face softened. You mean the Millers. Sweet family. Their little girl, Sophie, adored that dog, always called him Shadow. They had another dog too, but he passed away last year. Broke Sophie's heart. Then, not long after, they moved. Don't know where, though. The father said something about starting fresh after everything they'd been through. Clara felt a pang of empathy. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, but there were still gaps in Ghost's, or rather Shadow's story. Why had he been left behind? And what had happened to Sophie? Back at the shelter, Clara sat beside Shadow's kennel. He pressed his nose against her hand, his calm yet watchful demeanor grounding her. "You didn't just wander off, did you?" she murmured. "You're looking for them, aren't you?" That night, Clara updated the shelter's social media, sharing the new details about Shadow's past. "We've learned his name is Shadow, and he was once inseparable from a little girl named Sophie. They shared a bond that's rare and beautiful. But now, Shadow is searching. He's searching for Sophie, for answers, for a way back to the family he loves. Let's help him find his way home." As the post went live, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something much bigger than just reuniting a lost dog with his family. Shadow's story wasn't just about loss. It was about resilience, love, and the extraordinary connections that transcend time and distance. Little did Clara know, Shadow's journey was about to touch lives in ways she could never have imagined. As Clara approached Ghost in the shelter courtyard, the dog's demeanor seemed to soften. His piercing blue eyes followed her every move, and his tail gave a tentative wag. It was the first real sign of hope Clara had seen from him since his arrival. "Let's get you some fresh air," Clara said gently, clipping the leash to his collar. As they walked, Ghost paused every few steps, his ears flicking toward distant sounds, children laughing in the distance, the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that he was searching for something or someone. She had seen dogs look for their owners before, but this felt different. There was an ache in Ghost's posture, a longing that couldn't be ignored. Maria, her fellow volunteer, came rushing toward her, waving a piece of paper. "Claire, you need to see this," she called, slightly breathless. "What is it?" Clara asked, stopping as Ghost sat patiently by her side. "I was sorting through intake records and found something," Maria said, handing over the paper. "Remember that family from last month who came in to surrender their older dog? They lived on Willow Lane." Claire's heart skipped a beat. "The yellow house?" she asked, recalling Margaret's tip from earlier. Maria nodded, her eyes wide. "That's the one." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She looked at Ghost, who had turned his head, ears perked at the sound of a child's laughter echoing from across the courtyard. For a brief moment, his entire posture changed. His tail wag. He took a step forward but stopped abruptly, his tail drooping as he realized it wasn't who he thought it was. Later that afternoon, Claire decided she couldn't wait any longer. She drove to Willow Lane, the address fresh in her mind. As she turned the corner, the yellow house came into view. A for sale sign stood in the yard, and the once pristine garden was overgrown. Claire parked her car and stepped out, her heart heavy with anticipation. A neighbor was tending to her flowers in the yard next door. Seizing the opportunity, Claire approached. "Excuse me," she began, showing the woman a photo of Ghost on her phone. "I work at the shelter, and I'm trying to piece together this dog's story. Do you know anything about the family who lived here?" The woman's expression softened. "Oh, that's the winner's dog. Such a sweet boy." Her voice wavered. It's a shame. What happened? That dog was Sophie's whole world, especially after she trailed off looking uncomfortable. After what? Claire pressed gently. The woman hesitated before continuing. After they lost their older dog, Rex. He was Ghost's companion, almost like a father figure. Sophie took it the hardest. She and Ghost were inseparable after that. They'd spend hours in the backyard together. Sometimes, I'd hear her talking to him like he was her best friend. Claire felt a lump form in her throat. What happened to them? She asked softly. The family had a tough time, the woman admitted. Financial troubles, I think. And after Rex passed, Ghost started escaping the yard. He'd always come back, but it was like he was looking for something or someone. Claire glanced down at Ghost, who sat patiently at her side, his gaze scanning the street as if still searching. The neighbor's words clicked into place with everything Claire had observed. Ghost wasn't just a stray. He was a dog on a mission, a loyal companion trying to find his family. As Claire drove back to the shelter, her mind raced with possibilities. She would need to dig deeper, to find the Winters and reunite Ghost with Sophie. But she also knew this was more than just a rescue mission. This was about healing broken bonds and proving that even in the face of loss, love has a way of finding its way back. Clara's heart raced as she watched Ghost slowly approach Rachel, his movements calm but deliberate. For days, Clara had wondered if Ghost's story would ever lead to a resolution, but now, standing in the shelter's courtyard, she felt the weight of possibility. Rachel, her hands trembling slightly, knelt to meet the dog at eye level. Ghost paused for a brief moment, his icy blue eyes scanning her face, before leaning his head into her outstretched hand. Tears welled in Rachel's eyes as she whispered, "You're just like Luna." Clara noticed how Rachel's fingers moved gently along Ghost's fur, her touch tentative but filled with an unmistakable longing. It was as though she was seeking not just a dog, but a lifeline, a bridge back to her daughter, Isabella. "You said your daughter hasn't been herself since Luna retired," Clara said softly, breaking the silence. Rachel nodded, brushing away a tear. "She hasn't spoken much," Rachel explained, her voice trembling. "Luna was her anchor after the accident. Isabella would tell Luna everything, her fears, her dreams, even the silly little things that made her laugh. But since Luna left, she's been so withdrawn. I thought maybe Ghost could help bring her back." Claire glanced at Ghost, who now sat beside Rachel, his body language relaxed and open. There was a spark in his eyes, a quiet understanding that Claire had only seen a few times since he arrived at the shelter. This wasn't a coincidence, it felt like fate. "Would you like to introduce Ghost to Isabella?" Clara asked gently. Rachel hesitated, her hands twisting the tissue in her lap. "I'd love to, but what if it doesn't work? What if Isabella doesn't connect with him?" Clara placed a reassuring hand on Rachel's shoulder. "You'll never know unless you try. Ghost has a way of surprising people. He's already surprised me more times than I can count." With Clara's encouragement, Rachel agreed, and plans were made to visit Rachel's home the following day. That night, Claire prepared Ghost for what felt like his most important journey yet. She brushed his coat until it gleamed, packed his favorite toy from the shelter, and sat with him in his kennel, whispering words of encouragement. "You've been through so much," she murmured, stroking his fur. "But I think you're about to help someone who needs you just as much as you need them." The next morning, Claire arrived at Rachel's modest home with Ghost in tow. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. Isabella appeared, her wide brown eyes cautious but curious as they landed on Ghost. "Hi, sweetie," Rachel said, her voice warm but tinged with nervousness. "This is Ghost. He's here to meet you." Isabella didn't say a word, but her gaze never left Ghost. Clara unclipped his leash, and to her amazement, Ghost walked straight to Isabella, stopping just short of her. He sat down, his head slightly tilted, as if waiting for her to make the first move. Isabella hesitated before reaching out, her small hand trembling as it hovered over Ghost's head. When her fingers finally brushed his fur, something remarkable happened. Ghost leaned in, pressing his head gently against her chest. For the first time in weeks, a small smile broke across Isabella's face. Rachel covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Claire felt her own eyes sting as she watched the scene unfold. In that moment, It became clear Ghost had found his purpose, and Isabella had found her voice. The journey that had started with loss and uncertainty now seemed destined to end in healing. Ghost wasn't just a rescue dog, he was a lifeline, a symbol of hope for a family searching for light in the darkness. And for Clara, this was the reminder she needed that sometimes the most broken stories lead to the most beautiful new beginnings. Clara's heart pounded as she read the message on her phone. The shelter director's words revealed a shocking twist in Ghost's story, one that could change everything for both families. Ghost, it seemed, hadn't always belonged solely to the Winters family. He had originally been trained as a therapy dog, donated to a special program that matched dogs with children in need. The Winters family had adopted him after he retired early due to Rex's declining health. Standing in the lobby, Clara glanced between the Winters family and the room where Isabella and Ghost were sharing a moment of quiet connection. The decision she was about to make would impact everyone involved, but the new revelation gave her a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there was a way for both families to find healing. Taking a deep breath, Clara approached the Winters family. Sophie's tear-streaked face looked up at her, her small hands clutching a photo of herself and Ghost. "Please," Sophie whispered, her voice barely audible. "I just need to say goodbye." Clara knelt down to Sophie's level. "Ghost is a very special dog," she began gently. "And it's clear he's been loved deeply by your family. But something extraordinary is happening right now. Ghost has a unique ability to help people heal, and he's making a big difference for Isabella. Maybe we can find a way for him to stay connected to both of you." Sophie's parents exchanged hesitant glances, unsure of what Claire meant. "What are you suggesting?" Mrs. Winters asked softly. Clara smiled, her mind already forming a plan. "What if we create a shared arrangement? Ghost can stay with Isabella and Rachel for now, as Isabella works through her recovery. But we can arrange regular visits so Sophie and Ghost don't lose their bond." The Winters family fell silent, considering the idea. Sophie's eyes brightened slightly, a spark of hope breaking through her sadness. "I could see him again?" she asked, her voice trembling with cautious optimism. "Yes," Claire said. "Ghost has enough love for both of you. He's already shown us that." Mrs. Winters wiped her tears, nodding slowly. "If it means Ghost can keep helping Isabella, we'll do it. We just want what's best for him." Clara led the Winters family into the meeting room, where Isabella was still reading to Ghost. As Sophie entered, Ghost's ears perked up, and he turned toward her, tail wagging gently. Isabella looked up, her eyes curious but calm. Sophie approached cautiously, holding out the photo she had brought. "Hi, Ghost," she whispered. "I missed you." Ghost stood and walked over to Sophie, nuzzling her hand. For a moment, the two girls exchanged a shy smile, united by their shared love for this remarkable dog. Clara's heart swelled as she realized that Ghost wasn't just a bridge for healing, he was creating connections that would last a lifetime. Over the next few weeks, the shared arrangement proved to be transformative for everyone. Ghost seamlessly moved between the two families, offering comfort and joy to both Sophie and Isabella. For Clara, it was a powerful reminder of the extraordinary ways animals could touch human lives. As Ghost lay contentedly between the two girls, one sunny afternoon, Clara watched from a distance, filled with a profound sense of fulfillment. Ghost had brought two families together, healing hearts in the process. And for Clara, it was a reminder that sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most beautiful outcomes. Isabella, clutching a photo of Luna, stood up and walked over to Sophie, who was standing shyly by her parents. In her small, quiet voice, she said, "You loved her too, didn't you?" Sophie blinked, surprised, and then nodded. "She helped me when I was scared, just like Ghost does now," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ghost, as if understanding the gravity of the moment, walked between the two girls. He nudged Isabella's hand first and then turned to Sophie, gently resting his head on her shoulder. Both girls instinctively reached out to stroke his soft fur, their hands meeting briefly before they pulled back, shy but curious about one another. Emily, standing with the two families, felt her heart swell. The connection between these two girls, both carrying different yet deeply intertwined stories of pain and healing, was something that Ghost seemed to understand better than anyone. It wasn't just about him choosing one family, he was bridging a gap between them. Rachel cleared her throat, her voice emotional but steady. It's clear Ghost is special, more than we could have imagined. But what do we do now? How do we decide where he belongs? Clara, who had been observing quietly, finally spoke up. Maybe Ghost doesn't need to belong to just one family. Maybe he's here to help both. Mrs. Winters looked skeptical, but her husband interjected. What are you suggesting? Emily stepped forward, her tone thoughtful but firm. Ghost has already shown he has enough love for both Sophie and Isabella. What if we created a shared arrangement? He could live part of the time with the Martinez family, helping Isabella, and part of the time with the Winters family, staying connected with Sophie. It wouldn't be easy, but it might be what's best for everyone. Both families exchanged glances, processing the idea. Sophie looked up at her parents, her tear-streaked face filled with hope. Please, Mom, Dad, I just want to see him sometimes. Rachel knelt down beside Isabella, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Would that be okay with you, sweetie? Sharing Ghost? Isabella looked at Sophie, then at Ghost, and nodded slowly. If Sophie needs him too, then yes. The adults began discussing logistics, how the arrangement could work. The times Ghost would transition between homes, but the real magic was happening on the floor. Sophie had shown Isabella one of her drawings of Ghost and Rex, and Isabella was now showing Sophie her Luna photos. The two girls were bonding, united by their love for Ghost, and the healing he brought into their lives. Emily watched, her heart full as the once distant families began to laugh and plan together. Ghost sat contentedly between the two girls, his tail wagging softly, his eyes calm and wise. In that moment, Clara realized something profound. Ghost wasn't just a dog caught between two families. He was the glue that brought them together, proving that healing, love, and hope could transcend the walls people build around themselves. It was a reminder that sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most beautiful outcomes. Later that evening, as the families left the shelter together, Ghost walking proudly between them, Emily stayed behind to update his file. She paused, reflecting on how the story had unfolded. She typed a simple but heartfelt note. Ghost isn't just a dog. He's a bridge, connecting two families and helping two little girls find their way back to joy. A true healer, in every sense of the word. As Ghost nudged the blue rope towards Sophie and Isabella, a quiet understanding seemed to pass between the two girls. They each held an end, their initial hesitation melting into tentative smiles as Ghost sat between them, his tail wagging steadily. It wasn't just a game, it was a moment of connection, a fragile but beautiful start to something bigger. Maria, wiping her tears, turned to Clara. This isn't just about us anymore, she said softly. Ghost has already brought them together. Maybe that's what he's meant to do, help all of us heal. Emily, standing quietly by the doorway, felt a surge of hope. She had seen Ghost work his magic before, but this was different. He wasn't just helping one person or one family. He was creating a bridge between two lives filled with pain and loss. The idea that had been forming in her mind finally took shape. Maria, Clara, Emily said, stepping forward. I think Ghost is trying to show us something important. There's a program the shelter is connected to, one that places therapy dogs with families in need, but also fosters community support. What if Ghost became part of both your families? He could live with one of you part-time and the other the rest, continuing to help Sophie and Isabella in their journeys. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed her words. Maria looked at Isabella, who was now giggling softly as Sophie tugged on the rope. Clara glanced at Sophie, whose face, for the first time in weeks, was lit up with joy. It's unconventional, Maria said hesitantly, but maybe it's what we need. Isabella hasn't smiled like this in so long. And Ghost clearly has a gift for bringing people together. Clara smiled, her voice steady. I think we can make it work. For Sophie, for Isabella, and for Ghost. The two families began discussing the logistics, how to share time, how to manage his care, but the most important thing had already been decided. Ghost wasn't just a dog who needed a home. He was the heart of two families, guiding them toward a shared purpose. Emily stepped back, watching as the once separate families began to bond, their voices growing lighter as they laughed and planned together. She felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced in years. Ghost had done something extraordinary, not just helping two little girls, but forging a connection between people who might never have crossed paths otherwise. As the evening went on, Ghost lay contentedly on the floor, his head resting between Sophie and Isabella as they played. The adults continued to talk, their earlier tensions replaced by mutual respect and a shared vision for the future. Before leaving, Maria turned to Emily. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Ghost isn't just a dog, he's a miracle." Emily smiled, glancing at Ghost, who wagged his tail lazily in response. "He's more than a miracle," she said softly. "He's a reminder that even in the hardest times, there's always a way forward if we're willing to work together." As the families left the shelter that evening, Ghost walking proudly between them, Emily felt a deep sense of hope. This wasn't just a new chapter for Ghost, it was a new beginning for everyone involved. And for the first time, she truly believed that love, healing, and connection could overcome even the greatest losses. As the idea of Ghost bridging two families began to take shape, the room buzzed with a cautious hope. Clara and Maria exchanged tentative smiles, their eyes reflecting a shared understanding of what this arrangement could mean for their daughters. Emily stood quietly, her mind racing with the logistics of how to make this unconventional solution work. Ghost, ever intuitive, remained in his spot between Sophie and Isabella, his tail wagging softly as if he, too, understood the significance of the moment. "I think we can do this," Clara said, her voice steady yet emotional. "If Ghost can live with Isabella but still visit Sophie regularly, it could give both girls what they need." Maria nodded, glancing at Isabella, who had relaxed visibly since meeting Ghost. "We'll need to create a schedule that works for everyone. Structured visits, consistent routines, it's the only way this can work." The shelter director stepped forward, her expression both serious and encouraging. "The therapy dog program can assist with the transition. We can provide training for both families, not just for Ghost, but for the girls as well. This isn't just about the dog, it's about creating a shared support system." Emily felt a wave of relief. The pieces were falling into place, but she also knew this was only the beginning. "It's not going to be easy," she said, addressing both families. "There will be challenges, adjustments for Ghost and for all of you. But if we work together, I believe this can be something truly special." Sophie spoke up for the first time since entering the room. "Does this mean Ghost will always come back to see me?" Her voice was small but hopeful. Maria knelt beside Sophie, meeting her eyes. "Yes, sweetie. Ghost will always be a part of your life. He'll help Isabella, but he'll also be there for you." Isabella added softly, "Maybe we can share stories about him. And about Luna and Rex, too." The simplicity of the children's words cut through the complexities of the situation, grounding everyone in the moment. Emily smiled, her heart full. "You're both right. This is about sharing, not just Ghost, but also your stories, your experiences, and your healing." The next few hours were spent working out the details. A schedule was drafted with input from both families, ensuring Sophie and Isabella had regular, meaningful time with Ghost. The Martinez family agreed to host him as his primary home, given their experience with therapy dogs, but Claire promised to create a welcoming environment for his visits. As the plan solidified, Ghost seemed to embody the calm at the center of this storm of emotions. He moved between Clara, Maria, Sophie, and Isabella, offering his quiet comfort and grounding presence. It was as if he understood the monumental role he was stepping into. When the families left the shelter that evening, there was a new energy between them. Clara and Maria exchanged phone numbers, vowing to keep open communication. Sophie and Isabella held hands, already planning what they'd do during Ghost's next visit. And Ghost, trotting happily between the two girls, radiated the kind of contentment only a dog could, simple, pure, and full of love. Emily watched from the shelter doorway, her chest tight with emotion. She had spent years witnessing the powerful bond between humans and animals, but this felt different. It wasn't just about one dog finding a home or one family finding hope. It was about building something entirely new, a shared journey of healing, love, and connection. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden light over the scene, Emily turned back to the shelter, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. Ghost had reminded her, and everyone else, that love doesn't divide. it multiplies. And in doing so, he had created something extraordinary, a family bound not by blood, but by shared hope and a loyal dog who brought them all together. Over the next few weeks, the remarkable transformation in the lives of both families became undeniable. Clara and Maria worked tirelessly alongside Emily to solidify the arrangement that would keep Ghost at the heart of their shared journey. The shelter conference room, once filled with tense decisions and hesitant hope, became a hub of laughter, creativity, and collaboration. Ghost, with his calming presence, seemed to understand his role instinctively. He moved seamlessly between Isabella and Sophie, responding to their needs with the same gentle assurance that had drawn everyone to him in the first place. Emily marveled at how a single dog could bring so much healing to two families with such distinct but interconnected stories. "We need to keep this as steady as possible," Maria suggested during one of their planning meetings, pointing at the colorful calendar spread across the table. "Ghost needs consistency, and so do the girls." Clara nodded, adding Sophie's therapist thinks having a clear routine and regular visits will give her something to look forward to. It's like having little pockets of joy scheduled into her week. The calendar quickly became a symbol of their new, blended lives. Ghost would live primarily with the Martinez family, where he could continue his therapy dog training, but he would spend 3 afternoons a week with Sophie. Weekends would alternate, and the families planned special arrangements for holidays and birthdays. What had started as a logistical challenge turned into a collaboration rooted in mutual care and respect. What surprised everyone most was how naturally the two families began to intertwine. Maria, who worked as a teacher, offered Clara tips on supporting Sophie's emotional growth, while Clara's older daughter, Jessica, volunteered to help Isabella with her math homework. Clara's husband, an amateur photographer, began documenting the journey, capturing tender moments between Ghost and the girls that would later serve as a powerful visual story of love and resilience. Emily, who had initially worried about how the arrangement would work, watched as Isabella and Sophie took ownership of the situation in ways no one had expected. Together, they created special spaces for Ghost in each of their homes. At the Martinez home, they set up a corner with photos of both families and Ghost's favorite toys. At the Winters apartment, they did the same, adding a framed picture of Rex that Sophie had chosen to share. "It's like Ghost has 2 homes," Sophie said one afternoon as she worked on a scrapbook with Isabella. "But not in a bad way," Isabella replied, carefully pasting a photo of Ghost wagging his tail between the 2 girls. "It's like he's helping both of us now." Emily felt a lump form in her throat as she listened. These 2 children, who had both experienced such deep loss, were finding strength not just in Ghost, but in each other. They weren't just sharing a dog, they were creating a bond that transcended their individual pain, one rooted in shared hope and healing. One particularly moving moment came when Ghost was officially introduced as part of the therapy dog program's pilot initiative. The specialist overseeing the program commended the families for their willingness to try something so unconventional. "What you've created here is extraordinary," the specialist said, addressing both families. "This could become a model for others, showing how shared connections can multiply the love and support available to families in need." As the weeks turned into months, the arrangement proved to be more than just workable, it thrived. Ghost flourished in his dual role, offering comfort to Isabella while continuing to visit Sophie and remind her of the joy she had once felt with Rex. The girls, once strangers, became fast friends, bonded not just by their shared love for Ghost, but by their understanding of what it meant to heal. Emily often found herself reflecting on how it had all started, a single post about a dog with soulful eyes and an unknown past. Now, that same dog was at the center of something much bigger than anyone had imagined. Ghost wasn't just helping 2 families heal, he was teaching everyone involved that love doesn't have limits. It grows, it adapts, and it creates connections where none existed before. When Ghost entered the Martinez living room, the atmosphere shifted. Isabella, curled up in her favorite reading corner, looked pale and withdrawn, her small frame trembling slightly. The gentle sound of Ghost's paws on the hardwood floor drew her attention. He approached slowly, his soulful eyes locked on hers, and laid his head softly on her lap as if to say, "I'm here for you." Isabella's hands, which had been tightly clutching her knees, relaxed as they moved to stroke Ghost's fur. Behind them, Sophie stood hesitantly near the doorway, holding out the worn stuffed animal she'd brought. "This helped me when I was sad," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You can keep it for as long as you need." Isabella looked up at Sophie, her eyes glistening with tears. She took the stuffed animal with trembling hands, offering a quiet thank you. It was the first time the two girls had truly connected in a moment of vulnerability, and it solidified the bond that had been forming between them. Maria and Clara exchanged glances, their hearts swelling with pride. This wasn't just about Ghost anymore. It was about the unspoken understanding and compassion these two girls were showing one another. Maria knelt beside her daughter and softly said, "Sophie and Ghost are here for you, just like we are. You don't have to go through this alone." Ghost, sensing the moment, nudged Isabella gently, his tail wagging faintly. A small smile broke through Isabella's sadness as she leaned down to press her forehead against Ghost's. The dog's steady presence, combined with Sophie's kind gesture, was working wonders. Clara stepped forward, placing a hand on Maria's shoulder. "This is what we hoped for when we decided to share Ghost," she said. "Not just for our girls, but for all of us." The living room slowly transformed from a space of tension to one of comfort. Sophie sat beside Isabella, and together they began to play with Ghost, taking turns throwing a softball across the room while the dog happily retrieved it. The sound of their laughter was like a balm, filling the house with warmth. Later that evening, as Maria and Clara discussed the day's events, Emily arrived to check in on how everything had gone. She found the two families gathered around the dining table, sharing stories and planning their next weekend together. Isabella and Sophie were in their own world, drawing pictures of Ghost and chatting like old friends. Emily smiled, realizing that the families had turned what could have been a divisive moment into one that brought them closer. "You're creating something truly special here," she said. "Ghosts may have been the bridge, but you're the ones building this new kind of family." In the days that followed, Isabella bounced back stronger than ever, and Sophie gained a newfound sense of pride in her ability to help a friend. The arrangement between the families had been tested, and it had not only survived but thrived. Ghost remained a steady anchor, but it was the love and resilience of the people around him that transformed the situation into something extraordinary. As Emily drove home that evening, she thought about how far they had all come. A once-abandoned dog, a grieving child, and a girl struggling to find her voice had woven together a story of healing, trust, and the infinite power of connection. Ghost wasn't just a therapy dog anymore. He was a symbol of how love could build bridges between even the most unlikely of hearts. Ghost watched over the scene, his gentle eyes observing as Sophie and Isabella found solace in one another. What had started as an emotional and overwhelming moment evolved into something extraordinary, a testament to the power of connection, and, of course, the steady presence of their beloved therapy dog. Sophie's suggestion to share her time with Ghost had been a turning point, but what followed was even more remarkable. As Isabella clung to Mr. Whiskers and began to relax with Ghost pressed gently against her side, Sophie launched into a story about her own struggles with stage fright. She shared how Ghost had helped her find courage, his calm demeanor grounding her when her heart raced too fast. Isabella listened, her breathing steadying, and for the first time since her anxiety episode, she began to open up. "Do you want to hear about my play?" Isabella asked softly, her voice hesitant but hopeful. Sophie's face lit up with encouragement, and she nodded eagerly. "Of course. Tell me everything." The two girls sat together, leaning against Ghost, who seemed to understand his role perfectly. He shifted slightly, positioning himself so both girls could feel his comforting presence. As Isabella described her role in the school play, Sophie offered her own tips on staying calm, creating a space where they both felt safe to share their vulnerabilities. Clara and Maria stood nearby, watching the interaction unfold with tears in their eyes. "This is more than we ever hoped for," Maria said quietly to Clara. "They're not just sharing Ghost, they're becoming each other's support system." What began as two separate families connected by one extraordinary dog was transforming into something much greater. The rigid schedule they had originally devised to share Ghost began to evolve, no longer dictated by time slots but by the emotional needs of the girls. The family started hosting weekly dinners, blending their lives in ways they hadn't anticipated. Emily documented every step of the journey, knowing it was something special. She watched Isabella begin to keep a journal, writing stories inspired by Luna and Ghost, Sophie, in turn, eagerly taught Isabella the special commands Ghost responded to, empowering her with a new sense of control and connection. One particularly heartwarming evening, the girls performed a small skit they'd written together for their parents. Ghost played his part as their loyal companion, much to everyone's delight. The room erupted in laughter and applause, a stark contrast to the tearful uncertainty that had once filled their lives. As Emily closed her notebook, she realized she was witnessing something that could inspire countless others. Ghost wasn't just a therapy dog. He was the catalyst for healing, a bridge between two families, and a constant reminder of the extraordinary bonds that can form when people and animals come together with open hearts. For Clara, Maria, and their daughters, this was no longer just about sharing a dog. It was about sharing strength, hope, and the unwavering belief that even the most difficult journeys can lead to something beautiful. And for Ghost, it was simply another day in his quiet, compassionate service of love. The idea of Ghost traveling to Houston as part of a therapy dog pilot program brought excitement and anxiety in equal measure to the Martinez and Winter families. Clara and Maria saw the opportunity as a testament to the progress they had made together. But for Sophie and Isabella, the thought of Ghost being away for 3 whole weeks felt overwhelming. 3 weeks is so long, Sophie said, clutching her favorite stuffed animal, her voice barely above a whisper. Isabella sat quietly beside her, her fingers idly running through Ghost's fur. The dog, as if sensing their unease, stayed still and calm, offering his silent reassurance. Maria gently placed a hand on Sophie's shoulder. I know it feels like forever, but think of all the kids Ghost could help. Just like Luna helped you, and now Ghost helps both of you. Isabella, who'd been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. We could help him too, she said, her voice soft but resolute. If we work together, we can make sure Ghost knows we're still with him, even if he's far away. Her words sparked an idea, and soon the two families gathered around the table to brainstorm. Rachel suggested documenting Ghost's journey through letters, photos, and videos. It'll be like we're all part of his adventure, she said. The girls' eyes lit up at the idea, and for the first time since hearing the news, Sophie managed a small smile. Over the next few days, the families worked together to prepare. Sophie and Isabella created a scrapbook titled Ghost's Big Adventure, where they could collect updates and memories. They packed a small bag with familiar items for Ghost, his favorite toy, a blanket that carried their scent, and even a special treat for every day he would be away. When the day of departure arrived, the families gathered at the shelter to send Ghost off. Isabella handed him a photo of Luna, her hand shaking slightly but her voice steady as she whispered, "This is for good luck." Sophie tucked her stuffed animal, Mr. Whiskers, into the bag, saying, "He'll keep you company." As the van pulled away, the girls waved until Ghost was out of sight. It was a bittersweet moment, but one filled with hope. "This isn't goodbye," Maria said gently. "It's just the next step in Ghost's journey and ours." The days that followed were challenging, but the families leaned on one another, sharing updates from the therapy center and working together to fill Ghost's absence. Sophie and Isabella added photos, notes, and messages to the scrapbook, finding comfort in the tangible connection to their beloved dog. By the time Ghost returned, he was greeted with cheers and tears of joy. The scrapbook, now bursting with memories, was presented to him like a trophy. As the girls embraced him, it was clear that their bond had not only endured but deepened. Ghost's journey had brought them closer, proving that love and connection could stretch across any distance. The discovery of Luna in the background of one of Ghost's training photos was nothing short of magical. Isabella and Sophie stared at the image, their eyes wide with excitement. "That's Luna?" Isabella gasped, her voice trembling with joy. Sophie leaned closer, her smile breaking into a grin. "It's really her." The news spread quickly through both households, bringing a surge of emotion to everyone involved. Rachel and Maria exchanged looks of amazement, unable to believe the coincidence or perhaps the fate that had reunited Luna and Ghost in Houston. It wasn't just a photo. It was a connection that bridged the past and the present, tying together the stories of two families and their remarkable dogs. The next day, the Houston Training Center sent a follow-up update. Luna and Ghost had spent the day together, their reunion warm and affectionate. The trainers noted how Ghost had seemed even more energized and confident after spending time with his mother, as if her presence had reinforced his mission. The families decided to use this unexpected reunion as an opportunity for a surprise. They reached out to Luna's retirement family, and after some coordination with the training center, planned a visit to Houston for the girls to see Luna in person. The idea filled both girls with a mix of excitement and nerves. "Do you think she'll remember me?" Isabella asked quietly as they packed for the trip. Sophie squeezed her hand and replied with conviction, "She will, just like Ghost remembered Luna." When they arrived at the training center, the reunion was nothing short of magical. Luna trotted into the room, her tail wagging, her eyes lighting up as if recognizing Isabella immediately. The girl knelt down, tears streaming as Luna nuzzled her face, just as she had done during their therapy sessions years before. Sophie, standing beside her friend, gently placed her hand on Luna's back, feeling the warmth and calm that the dog radiated. Ghost, watching the reunion from a short distance, wagged his tail and gave a soft bark, as if approving of the moment. The room was filled with an undeniable sense of healing and connection. The families stood together, marveling at how these dogs had not only brought them closer, but had created moments of pure magic that none of them could have anticipated. The visit sparked a new idea, a collaboration between the training center and the therapy dog program to document Luna and Ghost's story as a way to inspire other families and children in need. The families eagerly agreed, knowing their journey had the power to change lives far beyond their own. As the visit ended, the girls hugged Luna tightly and promised to visit again. Ghost stayed close, his steady presence a reminder that their shared journey was far from over. For Clara, Maria, and their families, this wasn't just a chapter in their story. It was the beginning of something much greater. The Houston visit marked a profound shift in the lives of Clara, Maria, and their families, solidifying the bond they had built and revealing the larger impact of their journey with Ghost. Walking into the training center, Sophie and Isabella were greeted with warm smiles and curious faces from children who had been touched by Ghost's remarkable ability to connect. The sight of Ghost moving gracefully between the children, offering a nuzzle here and a wagging tail there, reminded the girls of their own first encounters with the dog who had changed their lives. As the girls watched Ghost assist a young boy hesitant to engage, Sophie turned to Isabella. "He's doing what Luna did for you, isn't he?" she whispered. Isabella nodded, her eyes welling up as she observed Ghost crouch low to meet the boy's gaze, his calming presence creating an unspoken bridge of trust. "And what Ghost did for both of us," Isabella added softly. The reunion with Luna was nothing short of magical. The older dog, though visibly slower, exuded a warmth that filled the room. When Ghost trotted over to Luna, tail wagging, the connection between the two was undeniable. The trainers watched in awe as Luna and Ghost worked together seamlessly, their combined presence amplifying the therapeutic effect on the children. "It's like they're two halves of the same heart," the program director marveled to Emily, who was busy documenting the touching moments. But it wasn't just the dogs who made an impact. Sophie and Isabella quickly found themselves stepping into roles they hadn't expected. Sharing their personal experiences with anxiety, loss, and healing, they naturally became mentors to the younger children. They demonstrated Ghost's unique commands, shared the signals they had developed together, and showed the other kids how to build trust with the dog. The younger children looked up to them with admiration, finding comfort in their stories. Rachel, watching from the sidelines, leaned toward Maria. "Do you see what's happening here?" she asked. "They're not just sharing Ghost anymore. They're sharing their strength, their hope." The training center's director took notice of the unique dynamic between Ghost, Luna, and the families. Inspired by the success of the visit, they announced plans to expand their program to focus on pairing therapy dogs with multiple families, creating networks of support. The initiative was named Bridges of Hope, with Ghost and Luna's story as its centerpiece. Back in Austin, Emily worked tirelessly with the shelter to develop a local version of the program. Inspired by what they had witnessed in Houston, the shelter began identifying other dogs with therapy potential and matching them with families willing to share their time and love. Clara and Maria's families became ambassadors for the initiative, sharing their story with others and encouraging them to see the power of connection. As the families returned home, they realized their journey with Ghost wasn't just about healing their own wounds. It was about creating a ripple effect, spreading hope to others who needed it most. Sophie and Isabella, once strangers brought together by heartbreak, were now inseparable friends in Ghost. The heart of their shared family was a constant reminder of how love could unite even the most unlikely of people. One year after Ghost first arrived at the Austin shelter, Claire stood in the transformed courtyard, marveling at how far everyone had come. The once quiet space was alive with colorful banners, excited chatter, and children's laughter. It was the shelter's first Healing Hearts adoption event, inspired by Ghost's incredible journey, and families from all over Texas had gathered to learn about the groundbreaking shared therapy dog program. At the center of it all, Ghost moved confidently between Sophie and Maria, who had embraced their roles as young advocates. The girls guided families on tours, explaining how their unique arrangement had not only transformed their lives, but had also sparked a movement. "This is where it all began," Sophie said to a group of wide-eyed parents and children, gesturing toward the meeting room. "We thought sharing Ghost would mean losing something, but we found a whole new kind of family instead." Maria, her voice steady and self-assured, added, "Ghost taught us that love grows when you share it. It doesn't get smaller, it gets bigger." Emily, now the program's director, watched with a mixture of pride and awe. Over the past year, the shared custody initiative had grown beyond her wildest dreams. The program had reached thousands of families through the girls' blog and inspired shelters across the country to adopt similar models. Seeing Maria and Sophie confidently share their story with other children who faced similar challenges brought tears to her eyes. They had come so far from the frightened, uncertain girls they had been when Ghost first entered their lives. Rachel and Clara stood nearby, their faces reflecting the pride only parents could feel. "Remember when we thought this would be too complicated?" Rachel said with a laugh, watching Maria help a shy child pet one of the therapy dog candidates. "It's hard to believe how much has changed." Clara nodded, her eyes glistening. "We've all grown because of this. Not just the girls, but all of us. Ghost didn't just heal them, he brought all of us closer together." As the event went on, families shared their hopes and fears. Children connected over their love of animals, and Ghost became a bridge for everyone in the room. His calm presence encouraged nervous children and hesitant parents alike, demonstrating the power of shared love and trust. By the end of the day, the courtyard had transformed once again, not just into a place of celebration, but into a space of hope. Ghost's journey had started as a single spark, but now his story was a beacon of inspiration for countless others. As Clara watched Maria and Sophie lead another group, she realized that this was more than just an event. It was proof that healing was possible, not just for individuals, but for entire communities. The courtyard buzzed with excitement, the joyful energy of the event spilling over like rays of sunlight on a cloudless day. Clara stood near the refreshment table, watching Maria and Sophie animatedly describe their journey to a small group of families. Ghost lay calmly between them, his head resting on Sophie's knee, while Maria absently scratched behind his ears. The sight made Clara's chest tighten with pride and gratitude. It was hard to believe how much had changed in just a year. The shelter director tapped a microphone, calling everyone's attention for a special announcement. "Today is not just a celebration," she began, her voice warm but filled with emotion. "It's a milestone. Thanks to the generosity of our supporters and the success of stories like Ghosts, we've received significant funding to expand our therapy dog program nationwide. And at the heart of this initiative will be Ghost Story." The crowd erupted into applause, but the director wasn't done. "But there's more. Luna's retirement home in Houston has agreed to partner with us. They'll provide experienced therapy dogs to help train the next generation, ensuring that families across the country benefit from the kind of healing we've seen here." As if on cue, the doors to the main building opened, and Luna appeared, walking slowly but with undeniable grace. The older dog's calm presence immediately drew everyone's attention. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and tears welled up in Maria and Sophie's eyes as they saw Luna approach. Ghost, sensing his mother's presence, stood and walked toward her. The reunion between mother and son was quiet but deeply moving. Luna gave a gentle nuzzle, and Ghost responded by wagging his tail and pressing his nose to hers. But what happened next left everyone speechless. Luna and Ghost moved together, instinctively creating a calming space for a group of anxious children who had been watching from the sidelines. The two dogs worked in tandem, their therapeutic instincts complementing each other seamlessly. Parents wiped tears as they witnessed the magic of the moment, a living, breathing demonstration of everything the program stood for. Sophie turned to a reporter, her voice steady, but brimming with emotion. "Every dog here has the potential to change lives, just like Ghost changed ours." Maria added, "And every family has the capacity to grow bigger than they ever imagined." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the courtyard in hues of gold and orange, families exchanged contact information, shelters from other states eagerly took notes, and children made plans for future playdate. Emily, watching from a distance, felt a swell of pride. This wasn't just an event, it was a movement. Ghost lay back down between Maria and Sophie, his calm eyes scanning the courtyard as if he, too, understood the magnitude of what was happening. The shelter, once a place of sad goodbyes, had transformed into a hub of hope and new beginnings. Clara watched as Maria and Sophie walked hand in hand. Behind them, their families followed, now intricately connected in ways no one could have predicted. Emily's heart swelled as she realized the true impact of Ghost's journey. He hadn't just healed two families, he'd sparked a legacy, proving that love, when shared, doesn't diminish, it multiplies. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning, not only for Ghost, but for every family and dog who would follow in their footsteps. The story of Clara, Maria, and Ghost offers a profound lesson about resilience, connection, and the transformative power of shared purpose. At its core, the journey of these families reminds us that healing and growth often come from unexpected places. In today's fast-paced and individualistic world, their story teaches us the importance of creating communities of support, where challenges are not faced alone, but shared among those who care. When life feels overwhelming, it's easy to withdraw and try to tackle problems in isolation. However, this story reminds us that true strength lies in vulnerability, being willing to reach out, trust others, and let shared experiences become a bridge toward healing. One key takeaway from their journey is that love and support are not finite resources. Just like Ghost's ability to connect with both families, we can extend our care and attention without diminishing it. Whether it's within our own families, friendships, or broader communities, embracing the idea of shared responsibility and compassion can help foster deeper connections and mutual growth. In a world that sometimes feels divided, stories like this remind us that creating connections and fostering empathy can spark change not just in our own lives, but in the lives of everyone we touch. Be open to sharing and let love and understanding multiply. If this story touches your heart, take a moment to reflect on the power of resilience and love. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more incredible stories.